Hey everybody, I'm Yvonne with Back to Earth Creations, and in this video I want to show y'all how to make these earrings. They're a little blurry, but the rest of the video won't be, as well as a total of 3 variations. So it's these earrings and then 2 other variations that and I want to show you the designing process that we took from the first variant to get to here. So let's go ahead and get started. So with our 18 gauge, we only really need like a foot, like about 12 inches of wire. But if you want to go like ham and do like a lot of, other wire work or other things around the edge, just give yourself a little bit more. And so I don't want to over stiffen my wire, but I am going to use my nylon jaw pliers, just 1 swipe and 2 swipe to get our wire nice and crispy. And that's just for, I'll show you on this next one. If you can see that little bit of variation between this section and this one down here. Now, oftentimes whenever I can have a death grip on my wire, so I'll come through and try to get it, just nice and straightened out. But I'm going to pull off this section without straightening it and kind of let you be the judge. It doesn't look any different. It makes me feel better. But sometimes, especially even on like the 20 gauge wire, and it really does, I just don't know if the camera is going to capture the nuance of, there's just a very little bit of irregularity in the wire just from being curved on the spool, and this kind of straightens everything out, and that's going to make our little bends that we do crisper, more crisp. So I'm only going to make one of the earrings, and then if you want to make another one, we would just be kind and rewind the tutorial and then follow through it again. But this is also just present Vaughn having ideas about that. We may run into something like a snag or something and need to, re-demonstrate something. We'll see. Let's just get started. So now that we have our 2 12-inch lengths of wire, I'm going to take my flat nose pliers, which you only need the standard. We're going to do our flat nose, our wire cutters, our nylon jaw. If you don't have nylon jaw pliers, you can totally just use like a piece of like denim or heavy fabric, and do, kind of do the same thing, and it's pretty effective on its own. And then also probably, I think it's just these. You might want some round nose pliers if you're planning on doing some like spirals or anything like that. But I'm going to grab in the middle of our wire and bend. And then I'm going to take and move my plier jaws over to the side that my thumb was pressing on. And I'm just giving it a light squeeze to make sure that it's not slightly curved from interacting with my thumb. So now we're going to do a full arm span or wingspan of our wire. And so I just grab it and bring my hands apart from each other to their full distance. So this is probably around 5 feet of wire. It may be a good bit more than what we need, but I love not having to splice wire in. And now we're going to find the center of our wire. And there we go. So from here, I'm going to start with the wire. Let me just hang that right there. I threw it on the floor. It's okay. I'm going to tighten the bend that we've done just a little bit to get it to sit against our bead better. And so I'm trying to apply the same pressure. I have a boo-boo on my finger, so I'm using my middle finger today, but I like to hold with the same pressure and the same distance on each side, and that way it bends equally. And we'll just want to bend that up to fit the shape of whatever bead it is that we're using. And my hand's probably in the way, but I'm just pressing the bead down. That way the wire can't slide underneath it. And I'm just squishing those sides up and throwing it around a little bit. So it has a little bit more of a curve to it, but I think that'll be all right. And now we're going to do that same thing on the other side. Just shaping it. And I really do like to use my bead as the mandrel. And I'm just pressing those sides in together so that they're shaped around the bead. And then making sure that they fit in well with each other. I think that's going to look real nice. And we can totally sharpen those tips up a little more again, just because I think that's going to look really nice to have them be tight and even. There we go. Oh yeah, that makes me happy. I like how those are sitting. And now we will retrieve the wire that we threw. And I'm going to start with the wire that's going to be sitting closest to the bead, because you could have used 2 different color tones of wire. You could have even used 2 different gauges of wire. So just if you have something different going on, that's the only distinction here. Just grab the one that you intend on being closer to the bead. So I'm going to come a little offset by about 3 or 4 inches, and we are going to coil 30 coils. So to coil, let's zoom in quite tight here. And so there's 1, and I'm just holding on to the offset little tail of the wire. 2, oh, it's getting snagged up on my band-aid. 3, 4, and 5. And then I like to come in and give it a little bit of a squish. Now the main thing that we're looking for here is to just have the coils lay nice and snug against each other, and I've lost count, but that's fine. And so that one, I'm gonna say, y'all, I'm not bragging, but I did pretty good on that, getting them side by side. It doesn't always work out like that. Oftentimes I'll err on the side of leaving a little bit of space, and then I'll come in and give it the old smushy squish, and you can see it still comes out just as nice. So you do not have to get it perfect right on the first coiling. And you can see here, this is what I was talking about. Whenever I'm squeezing my wire, and I had it all nice and shaped and everything, and I'm just squeezing the heck out of it. That's why I'm working off on this end instead of where the wire is going to end up. So let's see. Also, I'm going to count. There's 1, 2, 3. Ooh. 2, 3, 4. Give me, I'm going to count off camera. Alrighty, so I got it brought up to where it's 20 coils. Oftentimes, if my eyesight's failing me, I'll just count the little notches I can feel with my fingernail, and that's how I'll kind of count. But using the zoom mode on my cell phone really helps. I just, as I'm recording, I have the cell phone up at a weird angle, so I can't really see. So we're going to do 10 more coils, but I wanted to demonstrate what I'm aiming for is to not do that number where it's back coiled on itself. And whenever that happens, I just undo what I was doing, and then I'm going to rub that out with my finger just a little bit, and then we're going to keep going. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and that brings us up to 30. And then we are going to scooch this down. So yeah, how this is, you can see compared to how it was, it's like very much more bent around now. And that's okay. The wire that we're using is an enameled copper core, and it's pretty close to what I would consider a dead soft wire. So it's very responsive to being re-straightened back out. Like, you don't have to really coddle it. But I'm going to make sure that that's nice and tight. And then we're going to come around, and I'm just going to encourage, this really isn't helping that my finger is bandaged. But we're going to push and kind of, I'm pushing with this thumb and encouraging the wire around the tip of the curve on this side. So you could choose your battles. If you'd rather just coil around the curve initially, then you don't have to worry about this part. There we go. And that is how that first step goes. I want to give it a nice smush though, because you're going to have a little bit of spread there on the tip where the wire, the core wire, is showing through your coiling. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but you can just kind of squish it. So now we're going to line up our bead, and I want to see how this is looking in relation to the bead hole, because the reason I'm going with 30 coils is because I know from previous projects that that's what works on this bead size. But if the hole were closer to the tip of the bead, I may have only done, 18 to 20 coils, so that these wires here would line up with passing through our bead. Now, on this design, I was able to just pass directly through with one wire, and then the other wire I had wrap around the back. That way, it kind of kept it from being like the bead from being weird whenever I was trying to work the rest of the way up. But we could have tried to feed both of them through, but I liked having it just across the back. It made it look a little bit more magical. But with this one, since we're adding a frame, what I'm going to do is I have one side of the frame coming to where, do you see how it's underneath that wire? And then here I have this wires coming around the back. So we want to position our frame wires. I'll probably alternate between calling them core wires and frame wires. But it's the same thing in this tutorial. So I'm just lining that up, and then I'm going to zoom back in for y'all. You can see there's 2 rotations around both. And then I'm going to do 1 and 2 wraps just around that inner frame wire again. And so that's one side, and now we're going to do that same thing on the other side. And you can see things can get cumbersome pretty quick. And the way that I help with that, I'm going to zoom back out, is I go ahead and just move that weaving wire back over to the other side. That way it's being held off, and this goes for whether you're left or right-handed. Just put it off onto whatever side that it's out of your way. Like, it's another one of those instances of we get to choose our battles. And so now with a zoomed out perspective, we go around 1 and 2. And then I'm going to do just a little bit. I opened those up. It's narrow here, but wider up at this end. And that should help me to get my wire in 1, around 1, and 2. Around just this inner frame wire. And again, that's now our exterior frame wire is attached, and we can start threading our bead through. At this point, I do not have a preference for which side is the front, so I'm just going to kind of pick, and I'm squishing with my flat jaw pliers, my flat nose pliers, or wide nose pliers, to get those 2 little coils that we did that attaching weave. So I'm going to set that on the table, and we're going to pick up our bead, and I am going to thread through our bead, and then we're going to slide it all the way down. It's normally not too much of a trouble to do this. I'm just trying to stay in frame as well, and I'm getting tangled on everything from my pliers to my coffee cup. So from here, I'm going to put that wire through in between these 2, but I've not tightened anything down yet because this is a great opportunity to do one last fitting of our frame wires. And so I want to pull nice and tight. So this is going to make the 3rd coil around this inner cord wire. So I'm going to complete it, pull it nice and tight, and then go 1, 2. Give it the old smushy squish. And if you don't want to use your fingernails, I really like using my bent nose pliers for this. I just smoosh like that. And I'm holding the pliers tight enough that they get caught on the wires, the coiled wires, but loose enough that they can slide without marring on the core wires. So it takes a little practice, but it's totally worth it. And now with our other wire, I'm going to just come around the back. And again, put that weaving wire off to the side. And then we'll come up here this way, in between those 2, pull in nice and snug. And that completes that one. And then we're going to go 1 and 2. And then from here, we can go, and I'm just flipping it so that it sits comfortably in my hand. I'm going to wrap around once and twice around both frame wires. And then from here, I am going to do, oh, well, I didn't do that on this one. That's okay. But on this one I did, and I like it. I like that a lot. I like the continuous, because you can choose to have a gap, or you can choose to be continuous. I'm going to go with the continuous on this one. So there's 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to do this side zoomed out, and then we'll do the other side zoomed in. So hopefully we'll catch what's going on. So there's 1, 2. Let's see. I gave it the old squish down. I think we can go ahead, and I'm going to bring this wire so that it's exiting. I'm going to do 1 coil and then have it so that the wire's exiting towards the front of the bead. If you see how that's the front of the piece. Okay, and so now we're going to zoom in and we're going to do the same thing on the other side. And so here we are. There's that 1, 2, and then we're going to go 1, we want to end up with 2 wires. Well, that just looks weird. What has happened here? No, yep, that's 2 wires. It looks like I got a little crossed over. I'm not going to stress it. So there's 1, 2, and then we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, and I'm wondering out of frame, but 5. And so you can whoop, kind of push that in a little tighter. And then 1, 2. And then we're going to bring it forward so that that wire is kind of poking through. And see, whenever I crossed over on one of these, whichever one it was, yeah, that kind of changed which direction it was coming around. Ideally, this wire here would have been going towards the back. It would have been going towards the back, but they're both coming out towards the front, and I think that'll be just fine. So what I'm gonna, I'm not even in frame at all. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come across, all the way across. Ooh, actually, I changed my mind. We're gonna come around to where the wire is exiting towards the back. And then we're gonna come up and in front. So like it's a little bit of a weave thing that's happening here. And so if you can see, now this might be a little tricky, and what this is going to do is it's going to make a difference between if you wanted it to just sit like this here, and I don't even know, I'm reconsidering. If you want an outside style wrap, we wouldn't come around to the back. We would just come from in between and wrap around. But we can try it and get another little bit of a different look and feel by having it, because we're not going to be looking at the back side, by having it so it's exiting to the front and then coming around behind the bead and then coming to the front and then around our wire here. I do hope that that makes sense. Now we'll want to watch out for it pushing the bead too far forward, but that may be pretty cool too. So there's 1. And 2. So we have 2 little stabilizing wires there. And now I'm going to take this side and I'm going to wrap it around to the back. Wait, no, I'm not. What's happening? Oh, good grief. Oh, that one already got, oh, I don't even know what's happening anymore, you guys. Okay, so I've decided I need to undo that boo-boo that I thought I'd be able to just leave in there. Which, this is a learning opportunity, right? Like, we get to figure out how to recover from when things don't go as planned. So this is another reason why I absolutely love using Parawire. This is not sponsored. I just use their stuff and love it. Is because I can totally just come through and without crying or being upset or anything like that, even though it's a little upsetting. And it can be really daunting, y'all, to have to rip out stitches, more or less, for lack of a better, like anybody who's crocheted or knitted, I think y'all understand the anguish of having to just pull out stitches, but you know, we can do it. We'll get it right. So now I've unwrapped all the way back to there, and this is where these nylon jaw pliers really come in handy. And if the wire breaks, it's okay. I'll show you how to splice in wire. Or we'll get the salt and we'll go into the backyard, burn it, salt the bones, and bury it, and start over. So, which is okay too. So now we're going to go 1 and 2. There we are. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Oh, and it got a little crunchy and weird, but that's okay. We can just take it. And what I do is I press my fingernail up against, like just the back of my finger, against the weaving wire to provide resistance. And then I'm gripping quite firmly with my fingers down here. You can even do a little pinky curl to really build up that tension. And then press, and that tightens up that coil. So then we're going to go 1, 2 around both. Try to get our frame wires to look like they're behaving. And now from here, we're going to go 1 and then have it come out towards the front, because that is perfect, because on the other side, it's coming out towards the front after 1 coil. We got it to match. Excellent. And this is exactly what I'm looking for, because now these wires will continue wrapping around. And so I'm actually going to record it from this angle. And I'm going to, again, try to tighten up. So from this angle, we can see how the bead is just wibble wobble. That's okay. So it's going to come around and then between these wires, and so 1, and that I'm just doing enough to stabilize it, and then this one that's coming around the front, we're going to come through and 1, just to have them. Yeah, I'm going to have it go ahead, and I want those wires to have essentially just traded place. So now they've gone like, but we do that grounding, and that way it maintains tension, because these wires are wanting to come apart a little bit, and that's okay. But now we're going to take this one, and we get to do a design element factor here. So you can choose if you want your cross wires to be spaced narrowly or spaced wide. You can determine that by how many coils you do in between crosses. So we just did the 1. That's going to make it really tight. So let's go ahead and do a 2. And then it'll cross over. So that one has the 1. And then we're going to do the 2. Now this is definitely going to throw off our spacing for the distance between here. So if you wanted to, you could have done like you could have made the spacing a little bit wider on these ones if you're very particular about all of your spacing being the same, but I'm not going to be too stressed about it. And so I'm just going to come around to the back, and then 1, 2, then I'm going to have it exiting just the same way, but then I'm going to move it off to the side so I don't grab the wrong one, and then I just turn it in my hand. So there's 1 and 2, and quite frankly, if you have like a very bland bead, you could totally just use it as a wonderful background to your tight wire wrapping and just do this wrap all the way up. I personally think that would look really, really cool. And then we'll have it finish towards the front again so that our wires are like opposing each other. And then I'm going to bring this one around to the back, and then 1 and 2. It's exiting the correct way. I'm going to grab the slightly lower of the 2 wires and just turn the bead in my hand, and then there's 1 and 2. Well, those aren't even at all. Well, that's when we start just poking it and hoping for the best. So now that I'm looking at this, I probably could have given it a whole nother repetition up before doing the crossovers, but I think that'll be okay. I think sometimes letting go of seeking the perfection of what we have in our mind can give us a whole lot of room to let just the natural chaos of creativity take its course and make things that now, instead of having a duplicate of this style of earring, I have another slight variation of it. I guess I could have checked, but I did use a different wire gauge, so that doesn't always translate very well. And here's actually a good instance where you can see side by side. In my left is the 28 gauge and in my right is the 26 gauge, and those are of the same wire tone, and that's the antique copper from Parawire. So from here I backed it out just a little so that I can go 1 and 2 around both. Let's give that a nice solid smush and see. So yeah, you can see the gap is a little bit bigger. I don't think that's the end of the world. But if you're very particular about it, you can just kind of sketch it out perhaps first and count how many coils it would need to be, and then make sure that, like, 'cause this was 2, 4, 6, 9 coils, so I would have needed to have had a total of 9 coils in between here and in between here, so that's okay. So we're going to go 1, in fact, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now you'll see how that one just pulled out of alignment. That's because I'm tugging on it like my life depends on it. So checking in with myself to, how many was that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to do 10 in between. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 to try to make it look like that was intentional. So there's that. And then we're going to do the 2, 1, 2, and then I'm going to do just 5, just as a placeholder. 2, 3, 4. Now, whenever the ends are like this, don't hesitate to just go like that. It makes it so much easier on yourself to just pass your wires through. So again, just choosing our little battles. And that's how that's looking. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. And so I've zoomed back out just because I do know I can tend to wander out of frame sometimes. So what I'm doing here is I'm just, whenever the wire is exiting towards the front, I feel like it has me geared up and ready for doing another wrap around just one core wire. So that's why I'm pulling it towards the back, is it still has those 2 wires wrapped around our core or frame wire. But now we're going to do the 2 like that. And now we're going to do 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And y'all, oh, I don't know if I can find it, but there was this little tool that I think I may use. Haha, here it is. I found this for like $3 on the internet. I'll have them linked down below. But if you don't have, I've got like robust fingernails. I am very blessed. I take my little vitamins for like hair, skin, and nails and stuff. But I'm really lucky to have, for the most part, thick, strong fingernails. But if you don't want to goober your nails up, or if you're having trouble, this is a little thimble that has like a little nail kind of on it. I'm going to use this. But you can take that and press it and push it in. And this has been like, it's totally game changing. So again, we can just take it and kind of press. I do like, it's actually really nice that I have a Band-Aid on right now, because I do not like using this without like some padding on underneath. So whether it's some Nextcare tape or like KT tape or something. But so we can do that, and then we can go like 1 and then 2. Trying to clear up the background. The whole, yeah, I cleaned my work surface, I promise. You just scooch stuff off to the edges and then zoom in a smidge. Boom, clean work surface. So 4, 5. Meanwhile, in reality, boom. That's all right though. Okay, so there's to 5. So now we are going to continue, and from here you could have very little space up at the top. You could do more designs, some swirlies and stuff, but I'm just going to continue about a 1/2 inch of the design on either side. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then 1 and 2. And y'all, once you get the hang of this, like I do kind of recommend trying out something a little sleek to begin with, just to get the hang of, if you feel very clumsy with the bead in your hand and stuff, you know, and kind of building into the complexity of the design. You can also feel free to use like painters or masking tape there on the bead to hold it into place. But there's no reason why we couldn't have like 5 to 10 frame wires and like some really intensely cool like weaving and different patterns going on. So this is only the beginning. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I think this will be my last one. So there's 9 and 10. And then we're going to go flomp around and then flomp around. And then we're going to do just 5. Again, I like 5. It's a nice round number. It's a little placeholder for if I need to pause on one side, then I can come back and just assume, if I'm consistent, which isn't always the case, but if I'm consistent, then I can just assume that there's 5 stitches there. And now we're going to go like, and just flip it to the other side. And because that gets us about the length that I'm looking for. So that was 5, 6, 7, 8, oops, 9, and 10. And then we'll go 1 and 2. And I just want to mirror it on, so whatever we did on the first side, whatever weaving pattern and however far is what I want to do on the second side. So I'm just going to put my thimble back on. And 1, 2. I want to give a shout out to our Kik community and all the folks who were hanging out with us as our studio audience while we made this pendant. Hey guys! And if y'all are interested in watching our backlog of Kik live streams and different things that we do, we have those in our members only area here on YouTube. And so it's just a way for us to kind of archive it without having to use up our own computer brain space. How many did we do there? And so, oh, and I can still feel even through the Band-Aid, because you can hear it maybe. And you can feel when you do those little notches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So we've got 1, 2, and then 1, 2. So let's go ahead and do our third, and then 5 more, and that will have us mirrored. And then we get to do the fun part, which is, I mean, all of this has been fun, really, but I really like this style of bail, and I cannot wait to figure out how to incorporate this design with our homemade lampwork glass beads, because I think it would make such a fun little fidgety spinner. And ooh, I may go through and do a whole separate tutorial showing how we make the bead and then how we do the thing and how we do the stuff. And I'm excited. And that's, y'all, my husband and I have been crafting professionally since 2008. And I am still so in love with crafting. And I was really afraid of, now don't get me wrong, sometimes it genuinely, indisputably feels like work. But I love it. I love it when it's easy. I love it when it's hard. I love it when it's got me in tears. I love it when it's got me in tears from laughing. And I'm so glad to get to share the joy of that with y'all, because it's been awesome. And y'all have helped make our YouTube channel what it is. And I'm just overwhelmed with like gratitude to y'all just for being here. So thank you guys. Give yourselves a hug from me. And now we get to snip our wires. So we're going to take our wire snips, and we're going to come in here, and I'm going to go, I saw this, I can't remember whose tutorial I saw this in, but I'm going to give it a little smush, and I'm going to have it to where it's exiting between those two wires. And I really like my flush cutters. They were like $5 or $6 on Amazon, and I've had them for a while now, but not all flush cutters can get in the really tight areas. So if you're finding yourself in this predicament, you can take your wire, and I'm holding my 2 core wires close to each other so I don't get a bunch of distortion. And I'm just going to come in. If y'all remember whose tutorial that was from, because I've seen it from a couple of folks now, but I'm sure it originated from somewhere. It's so handy because now there's no little pokey bit. It breaks the wire off in between. And in fact, what we can do, ooh, I like this. I like science. I'm not good at it, but I like it. So I'm going to have it exit on the other side, and then I'm going to snip with my flush cutters, and we're going to get a really close in look. Okay, this is the one that I snipped. So I'm just looking at the different angles of that wire. So it's the side that we did the little whoop 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 thing, and this is the side that we cut, and I cannot tell a difference. So, and what's more important is I can't feel a difference. So I think both are a good idea, and the more techniques and little tricks and things like that we learn as artisans, the more tools we have in our toolbox. So now from here, I am going to hold the bead and the wire just like this, and then I'm going to bend in gently, holding both wires, and I'm pushing them kind of offset towards the back just a smidge, and then I'm going to turn this, and I'm going to set my hand up in the same exact way, so it's like my hands are the jig that just does the repeating pattern, and I turn the wire in the piece to suit what I'm doing. And I find that helps me to get slightly more consistent results. And if I were working on well, I'm going to be making a second one of these to match, but if I were working if I were doing that at the same time, I'd want to do the steps up to a point each, on the left earring and then on the right earring, and just, on one or the other. And it personally helps me to advance them consistently and get slightly more symmetrical results. I'm going to take that thimble off. And now from here, we get to do, this is going to be tricky because it removes all sensation for the most part, having the Band-Aid on there. And I never realize how much I depend on that until, well, here I am. And so I'm spacing our wires out just a little more. I'm going to clear up our background a smidge, because we're going to take this and I'm going to take my bent nose pliers and hold them like that, and then putting my thumb so that it's right on the cross point. Like, I want to be holding that cross point quite firmly, and I am just going to twist. That is not bad. I don't want to be marring my work with my pliers, but also I want it to be quite firm. And now from there, that first twist is the hardest. So I'm going to just bend that over, and then I'm going to bend this one over as well. You may need to overbend and then bring it back up to parallel just to get things to like match well. So there's that. And now we're going to come in here, and I'm going to bring those up just a bit. I'm going to bring the sides down just a bit, and I want to twist in the same direction. So again, I'm going to take our bent nose pliers, and I like to hold nice and stable. I'm going to grab at that. I started here, now I'm going to move up a cross point and do that twist. And then we can bend this wire over. And then I'm just bending this wire over. And again, that's a pretty tight twist, so you might need to overbend just a little bit more. And I bet I can start doing it with just my fingers now. Let's try that out. So we're just coming up here and twist. Yeah, I do like it better with just my hands, but that's because that's what I'm used to, not necessarily because it's better. I think I'm going to try it with my nylon jaw next, because I like the stability and ease of using my pliers, but I don't like that it leaves a little mar on the wire. So I'm going to try the nylon jaw this next time. So there's that. And I'm going to bend those a little bit wider. I'm going to bring these two in just a little bit more so I can hold on to both of them at the same time. And then I'm going to grab at that cross point and twist. And I think that's the way I like to do it. So I'm just going to bend that up and around. And then I'm going to bend this one. So I like to bend it down to get them to be very parallel to each other, and then like relax it back up a little bit. And I'm going to look at the prototype I had done of this. It looks like we have 1, 2 bends on the 3, 4, 5 crosses. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do one more then. And this is another instance where if I were making either matching pendants or matching earrings, I would be doing one and then the other up to a certain point. So I do all 5 on this one, and then probably on the other one, let's see, did I mirror them on these ones? I did. I had mirrored the crosses. And so, and the way to do that is the difference would be on this one, how the left wire is on top. To mirror it, I would have the right wire be on top, and then just proceed with the way that the wires flow. Okay, so we're gonna do with our nylon jaw again. And I like to open it up just a smidge, because then not only are they narrower and I can fit them more comfortably in the jaws of my plier, but it gives me a little bit of space that I can grab here and do that twist. And it keeps everything nice and tight, but it takes up space. Like it's pulling material from both directions when we do this twist. Actually, it seems to draw more material from this side because the pliers have such a firm grip. When I do it with my fingers, it pulls more material from this side. So it pulls from the side of least resistance, I guess. Okay, so I'm just bending that around, and then we'll flip it, and then we'll bend that around. Very cool. Oh, that's exciting. Now from here, you could use a knitting needle, you could use a pen. I'd want something that's not going to have too much squish to it, so if it's a pen, I'd want it to be a sturdy one. Let's use a knitting needle today. So this is my front, and so I'm going to come down and I'm just bracing with my thumb, though you could also use your nylon jaw pliers to brace it, and then I'm just bending forward just a smidge. So if you can kind of see, holding it there kept it in place. And my hands are well, again, I've been wire wrapping professionally since 2008, so my hands are tired all of the time. They're tired. So anytime that I can use pliers in place of my hands, it just takes some of that stress off. So now that we've bent forward, I'm going to put a thumb on either end of our pressure points and put our knitting needle as the mandrel there in the middle, and then we're going to just bend around and make sure that that spacing is good. I'm pleased with it. And now from here, what do we do? Ooh, we could have, I'm definitely doing that. So on these ones, I had on the 20 gauge, you can see I kind of just split it and then had it come around the bottom. And this is where we snipped it and butted it, I think. I think I'm going to bring it around the top. So I'm taking the outermost wire, just there around the top, and then I'm going to put a little bit of a bend into the whole thing to try to keep it from kinking. And then I'm going to grab that with my pliers, and then I'm just pulling down and to the back, and then I'm going to do the other side. So again, we have the outermost wire. I'm going to put that bend in it, which to do that, I just offset my finger and my thumb and apply pressure. Like, I've learned so much, y'all, about wire wrapping from watching, like, how it's made with the different, like, machining and things that they do. Because oftentimes, if you're watching them bend, big, steel rods and stuff, well, if you just have your hand be the mechanism that it's going through, you can get very similar results on, this 18 gauge wire. So just scale it down. And just it's a great way to kind of passively just absorb information. And so coming around that way. And I like to do one at a time, that way they're kind of side by side. And then this one, I'm going to shape it around. And again, I get that same thing by pushing down with my thumb and pushing up with my finger. It gives us that curve. And then bringing that down. And now from here, I like to straighten out and get these wires both going in the same direction. And y'all, we could get all sorts of fancy down the frame of this, if you wanted to. So again, before getting its placement particular, I like to get it curved and bring it through. This was much easier with the 20 gauge, but the 18 gauge isn't giving me too much of a rough time, mostly because I'm using my pliers. Oop. And I actually really like how the 18 gauge is like holding its shape, so I can tug against it and stuff and not have too much problem. Okay, so there we are. And now we're going to come in. Let me zoom in for y'all. I'm going to come in and just use my flush cutters, and y'all, this is what I love about these flush cutters. That's 2 lengths of 18 gauge wire cut through at the same time, nice and flat. My cutters aren't chipped, they got a little copper on them, but that'll be fine. Linked down in the video description. I'm just coming in and snip. And I try to make sure to use I don't even know if that was in frame, I'm sorry y'all. I try to make sure to use the flat side to cut. That way it leaves a nice little flat side. And then from here, we can just give it the old squishy smush. And what's more is we could even take our flat nose pliers and we could try to tuck. Actually, I'm going to use my stepped flat nose because they're a little bit more petite. And I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to grab, and then I'm going to bend that behind. And so I'm going to grab, and then I'm going to bend that, but just smush it. And just push. And that way, there's no little nakey end poking out the way that there is on this side. And that's my favorite, is whenever the ends are hidden, because like, if you have curly hair or anything like that, and you can always feel free to trim off just a little bit more material. Boop, and boop. Keep your eyes shut though, because it will ping directly into your face. You gotta be careful about that. Like normally I try to have my finger over, you know, whatever it is that I'm smushing. Okay, and there we go. So that's gonna be our back side, and that is our front side. And I can kind of come in here and squeeze those wires together a little bit, but that is one of our earrings. Or pendants. Like this could be a pendant just completely by itself with that bail style, with that as the bail. But you can see on here I used a 16 gauge 1/8 inch jump ring to attach an ear hook, and I don't have an ear hook right now. But the way that I do the jump rings, they come already kind of, you're just, whenever they're coiled, it's like a spring, and then it gets cut down one side, so it's going to be a little offset. So I just take it and I open it like that, and then we'd hook through right here, and you could attach the ear hook, whoops, just through the loop. Pretend for a moment with me that we have an ear hook. Just right through there, and then we'd close it. And anytime that I'm closing a jump ring, whenever they're cut, a little bit of material is removed from the ring. Whenever we coil and cut our own, it's like 1/100 of an inch, but it's there. And so whenever we're closing the ring, I'll kind of wiggle back and forth, and I'll apply inward pressure, and that brings those ends together and accounts for that gap. So that's our closure right there. You can kind of see it. And so yeah, that is how. And so if you wanted another one, you'd just do it again. And I do like to take notes as I'm going, for if you're doing your own design, to kind of keep track of, like, this one is for this design right here. And so it's from, 30 coils on the bottom, 1 cross wire in the back, 15 coils up. I then started doing the transition, and you can see right there, we have where it's 1, and then 1, 2, and then 1, and then 1, 2, and then 1 across, and then I did 50 coils on either side. So this one, now that's a very replicable design that I keep in my planner. So we have a design here that this was the first rendition of. I'd gotten these really cool beads in, I think it was probably January's Potomac bead box, and I had never used these style of beads before. So this is a triangle bead that has 1 hole drilled through it, just through there. And my initial thought was to wrap it like briolet style, with like a little spiral on it. And while I think that would have been really cute, I wanted to try something different. And so here we have a little bit of a mashup of how we've wrapped some of our like double terminated points and things in the past. If I remember, come on Future Vaughn, I believe in you, there'll be a link up on the screen that will take you to the tutorial that this is kind of an evolution of. But what we did here was I just had the 16 gauge wire. This is either a 16 or an 18 gauge is what I would recommend using for this. Today we're going to be using 18 gauge and 26 gauge, but there's a lot of different combinations that you could do to make this work with the materials that you already have on hand. And we've threaded through where the bead hole is drilled. So again, if you have a top drilled bead, you could do this probably with any shape of bead. It doesn't have to be this triangle. And then we just did the coiling, which I'll go over kind of how to do that. And then we did the same little crossovers that we will be doing here in a bit. And then I used some chainmail jump rings. Now, I don't like to use just regular old jump rings because they don't tend to be robust enough to do what I want them to do. Whereas the chainmail rings that I use, we either coil and cut them ourselves, or I get them from Chainmail Joe, or I use them out of this AmericanChainmail.com sampler, which there will be links for all the different tools and materials that I'm using down in the video description. And if you purchase through those links, it does help to support our business, but at no additional cost to you, which is pretty nice. So this was the first evolution. And then I was like, how can we make it fancier? So I started to come through and I wanted to make it look a little bit like an urn or like a potion bottle that was full of something. And pendants are just earrings that I've only made one of. So even though I have these designed as earrings, they could totally be utilized as pendants or incorporated into, like, I bet y'all, if we did these two here and had them kind of coming off to the sides and attached to like a big focal point, there's endless possibilities to how you can utilize this concept into your own works of art. So this one, I wanted to add an additional frame wire, which gives me the opportunity for weaving, which I just did a simple weave on this one where it's just enough to bind on that additional wire. And I definitely was using 16 gauge here, which is nice because, I mean, it's robust. It hammers out well. We could have decided to do some hammering here on these little, kind of urn handles coming off to the sides. And what I especially like about it is here we were able to do those loops that we then attached to the ring too. So that's another design. But the one that I'm going to be showing y'all, how to do today on this super durable design is to kind of make it a little more Celtic-y with that little bit of braiding there. And this is where I do like to use an 18 or even a 20 gauge. Now the difficulty with the 20 gauge is that it's very prone to being distorted. So like if I squeeze it too hard with my hands or something while I'm weaving, or if I bend the wires off, they don't hold up on their own quite as well. And this one I did do with, I think that's a 20 gauge, y'all. We're going to try it with an 18 gauge today and see. But this is a 20 gauge with 28 gauge wire. So again, just different examples of how you can go about this. And the way that, well, let's get to it. I think it's been, I just wanted to show you guys how that this one design, I started with just the core concept, and then added layers of complexity, and then refined it into almost something else. So, but again, there's no reason why we wouldn't be able to implement these in their different forms into bracelets, necklaces, oh my gosh, like a little hand flower piece or something. If we did a less, like a thing coming up on the stuff, then I don't know, that's a little pokey outy for me wanting on my hand. But anyways, there's ways that we can modify this. So let's go. So that is how to make this thing right here, which I was going to make as earrings, but then the other bead, like legit, like broke in half. So better at the beginning of a project than at the end of it. So I'm very, very pleased that this doubles as a pendant because I did already have the earrings, so now it'll be a matching set. So I'm really excited about that. But if y'all have any questions, comments, or ideas, please leave them down below. I do love hearing from you guys. If there's a bunch of links down in the video description for if you want to help support the channel, if you're looking for the same tools and materials that we use in all of our work. And keep an eye out for, we do new tutorials every week. We do multiple live streams throughout the week. You can see our full up-to-date schedule at backtoearthcreations.com. And also over there, you can RSVP on our calendar for free, but that way you get an email sent to wherever you want the email sent to about an hour before our live streams or tutorials go live, and that way you don't have to worry about YouTube sending a notification or missing out on anything. So again, you guys, thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you all next time. So until then, happy crafting. Mwah! Bye.